You know the math, and you've known that math for years. Compound interest, time in the market, the difference between starting at 30 versus 40 versus 50. You've seen the charts. You understand the concept. You could explain it to someone else if they asked. You are not uninformed about saving, and yet the savings rate isn't where you know it should be. The automatic transfer you set up got paused. The investment account has been sitting at the same balance for longer than you'd like to admit. And when you try to figure out why, the answer that comes back is something vague and unsatisfying. Life got busy, something came up, you'll get more serious about it next month. Here's what I want to tell you about that gap. The gap between knowing and doing isn't a knowledge gap. It's not even a discipline gap, although it gets called that constantly. It's a translation gap. And the reason it's so persistent is that the financial advice industry has spent decades trying to close it with more information, when information was never what was missing. Think about what the standard approach to savings education actually does. It explains the mechanics. It shows you the charts. It tells you the numbers. And then it assumes that once you understand how powerful saving is, you'll naturally start doing it. That assumption, that comprehension leads to behavior, is one of the most thoroughly disproven ideas in all of behavioral economics. Knowing something is valuable is not the same as feeling it is valuable. And your savings behavior is driven by feeling, not knowing. There's a concept called hyperbolic discounting. And once you understand it, the knowing-doing gap suddenly makes complete sense. Hyperbolic discounting is the tendency to place dramatically more value on rewards available right now compared to the same rewards available in the future. And here's the key. The discounting isn't linear. It's steep. $1 today doesn't just feel slightly better than $1 next year. It feels vastly, disproportionately better. The present pulls on us with a gravitational force that future rewards simply cannot match on their own terms. This means that when you look at your paycheck and think about putting $200 into a retirement account, your brain is not doing a calm, rational comparison of present cost versus future benefit. It's running an ancient valuation system that is deeply evolutionarily biased toward the present. The $200 right now feels real, tangible, certain. The $50,000 it might become in 20 years feels abstract, uncertain, distant. And your nervous system responds to those two options the way it was designed to. It gravitates toward the certain and present reward and away from the abstract and distant one. This is not irrationality. This is your brain working exactly as designed. The problem is that it was designed for an environment where tomorrow was genuinely uncertain and today's resources genuinely needed to be prioritized. Your brain cannot intrinsically feel the importance of a future that is 25 years away. That future is not emotionally real to it in the same way that rent, groceries, and a dinner with friends are emotionally real right now. Now, here's the thing about standard financial advice that consistently misses this. When someone tells you to just automate your savings and forget about it, the advice is technically correct. Automation works. But the reason most people don't follow through on it isn't laziness. It's that setting up the automation requires you to make a present sacrifice. You have to feel the money leaving, in exchange for a future benefit that your brain cannot adequately feel in return. The asymmetry is real. And without addressing that asymmetry, the advice just doesn't stick. There's another layer to this that most conversations about saving completely overlook. It's called present-biased preference reversal. Here's how it works in practice. Ask yourself if you'd rather have $100 today or $110 next week. Most people choose the 100 today. The immediacy premium wins. Now ask yourself if you'd rather have $100 in a year or $110 in a year and a week. Most people choose the $110. Suddenly the extra $10 seems worth waiting for. Same time gap. Same $10 difference. Completely different choice. The variable isn't the math. it's the presence of now. When the present is involved, the discount rate spikes dramatically. When everything is in the future, we think more clearly and make more patient decisions. What this means for your savings is significant. When you set up an automatic transfer to happen on payday, before the money lands in your spending account, you are removing the present from the equation. The choice was made in a future-to-future frame where your brain makes calmer decisions. That's why automation works when it's actually implemented. But the implementation itself requires a present-moment decision that is susceptible to exactly the same discounting it's designed to prevent. Getting started is the hardest part, not because you lack willpower, but because the starting decision is the one that happens right now when hyperbolic discounting is at maximum strength. So, what actually moves the needle when standard advice doesn't? The research points to something called mental accounting, a concept developed by the behavioral economist Richard Thaler. Mental accounting is the way humans organize money into psychological categories that don't exist in any objective financial sense. We treat $50 differently depending on whether we think of it as grocery money, discretionary spending money, or savings money, even though $50 is $50 regardless of category. Money is fungible. Our minds make it categorical. This tendency is usually discussed as a flaw. People blowing their tax refund because it feels like found money rather than income, or spending freely on credit because it doesn't feel like real spending. But mental accounting can also be used deliberately to make saving easier. When saving feels like a separate category, specifically when it feels like paying a bill, the present bias resistance drops significantly. You don't experience the same emotional friction transferring money to savings if your brain has categorized that transfer as an obligation rather than a trade-off. The money was already earmarked. It was never available for anything else. There's nothing to give up. The most effective version of this is what some behavioral economists call the pay yourself first principle reframed not as a saving strategy, but as a billing system. You are your own creditor. Your future self sends a bill every month. The amount is fixed, the due date is payday, and it gets paid before anything else. Not because you're disciplined, but because that's how bills work. You don't agonize every month over whether to pay your electricity bill. You pay it because it's a bill. Savings works the same way when you treat it the same way. There's one more mechanism worth naming here because it explains something that confuses a lot of people. Why does the savings rate often stagnate even when income increases? This is lifestyle inflation, and its psychological root is something called the hedonic treadmill, the tendency for people to return to a relatively stable level of life satisfaction regardless of income changes. When income goes up, expectations and spending adjust upward to match. The new salary quickly becomes the new baseline. The increased income that was supposed to fund increased saving gets absorbed into an upgraded version of the same lifestyle before the saving decision is ever made. The only reliable counter to this is pre-committing the raise before it arrives. When you negotiate a salary increase or receive a promotion, the most psychologically effective move is to direct a specific percentage of that increase to savings immediately, before your lifestyle has adjusted to the new number. The moment the new income becomes your baseline, it's psychologically identical to old income. The window to redirect it is narrow, and it exists entirely in the period between knowing the raise is coming and actually receiving it. Here's what I want you to walk away with. You don't have a savings problem because you don't care enough, or know enough, or try hard enough. You have a savings problem because you are a human being with a nervous system that was optimized for a world that no longer exists, operating inside a financial system that mostly pretends that problem isn't real. Every conventional piece of savings advice is aimed at the rational agent version of you, the one who weighs present and future costs calmly and responds accordingly. that person doesn't exist. Not in you, not in anyone. What works is designing around the actual human, the one who discounts the future heavily, who responds to categories and framing, who makes better decisions when the present moment isn't involved. Automation that happens before payday lands. A mental accounting system that labels savings as a bill rather than a choice. A pre-commitment to redirect income increases before lifestyle absorbs them. None of these require more willpower. They require a better designed system. The gap between knowing and doing closes not when you try harder, but when you stop relying on trying and start relying on structure. Build the structure this week. Pick one thing, just one, and make it automatic, make it a bill, or make the decision before the money arrives. Because the version of you making decisions at payday, with the money right there in your account, is working against you by design. The version of you making decisions a week before payday about money that hasn't arrived yet is actually on your side. If this reframed something for you, subscribe. Every week we break down the psychology behind financial behavior and why good intentions consistently aren't enough on their own. And drop a comment. What's the one savings habit that's been hardest to stick to? I'd genuinely like to know.